You may have noticed we didn't talk about the big problems in Dover, but to be honest, as I've said before, this is something that is to be expected on a regular basis. This is not a one off. And I think that's what the government was at least hoping for, that these would just be one off problems and that was it. It would just go away. But no, the chaos we have seen not only at Dover just in the past couple of days, but certainly also we saw last year, will continue. It will continue into the summer where it will once again sort of die down. Then it will probably explode again as we get maybe into that Christmas season where you get lots of a lot of heavy volume of cargo traffic. So this is not a one-off. It is a permanent fixture. And I have to wonder again, just like last year we saw a lot of chaos at airports, I have to wonder if this summer, yet again, we will see some big travel delays happening at airports. Doesn't surprise me. It would not surprise me in the least if we started to see, once again, trouble at UK airports. Now, one of the big things we're going to see, and I can guarantee you're going to start seeing these stories, is that you're going to get a lot of British people complaining when they get to the other side, especially when they get to Europe, about their wait queues. And here's the thing, if you think about the popular holiday destinations for many Brits where you have multiple flights from the UK, stopping at once, add that to the massive queue that's going to be forming at these custom terminals. Wouldn't surprise me if once again, as we said before, usual headlines of EU rules ruin my holiday, or Europe ruins my EU ruins, couples holiday, whatever. I fully expect to see those headlines yet again. But it's Brexit, my friends. But why are we covering it today? Well, this is because after, a couple of days of Suella Braverman trying to blame everything but Brexit, it seems that number 10 has actually come out and said, no, actually, Brexit is actually playing a role in this chaos that we're seeing down in Dover, which for number 10 is a very, very unusual admission. So that alone deserves coverage, which is why we're doing this one today and not last week when it was all the Dover stuff was kicking off. I think the fact that number 10 has now come out and said, actually, Brexit is playing a role in the Dover chaos. Yeah. So, but before we go diving into today's story, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button if you are new to the channel. Like I say, welcome. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. There's the YouTube thank you button, and of course the Pony Club down below as well. So, as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel. And over we go today with today's sort of story about this. So, this comes from Independent with the title of Brexit has played a role in Dover chaos, number 10 admits, after Braverman has blamed bad weather and Easter. So, there we go, get all that. So, number 10 has admitted that, quote, new processes... I love it. New processes. No, these processes have been in place really since, 2020. The big problem is you've had COVID that has meant that this large number of passenger transports, which we would have normally seen and would have been a fixture right from the word go, have been pretty much, mute. But now we're starting to hear about it, and it is every time. Like I say, you've got Easter. When we get into the summer, when we go on the summer holidays, we will start to see them. So, Suella Braverman was accused of being in complete denial after he claimed on Sunday that it was unfair to say that the huge holdups at Dover were an adverse effect of Brexit. Despite reoccurring problems with the gridlock in Kent in both 2021 and 2022, the Home Secretary claimed that checks were, quote, operating very smoothly at the border. blaming those current woes on bad weather and it being a very busy time of year. But Mr. Sunak's official spokesperson has said that a combination of factors were to blame, including new passport control processes, poor weather, and the high volume of traffic at Easter. And the thing is, those passport control centers are set to get worse. They are absolutely set to get worse. Why? Because the EU is bringing in new checks. They are now going to have to take biometric data. So you're going to have fingerprints and even sort of face scans. And remember, this was something when we were in the EU, we were advocating for. So when we get to see all these articles, which I'm sure we will see, about complaining about these new checks, not only just here at Dover, but elsewhere, remember, this was something that the Brexiteers wanted when we were in the EU. Just something to remember when we start to see those complaints. So when asked about the role of the post-Brexit checks, the spokesperson acknowledged that the French officials are now required to inspect and stamp every passport as passengers leave the UK. Obviously, we recognise that these are new processes in place, they said on manual checks. That's why authorities were given a long time to prepare for the new checks, including during the transition period. And of course, we are in discussion with our French counterparts about how we can further improve the flow of traffic. Well, you basically can't unless you get rid of the checks by joining the EU, by signing up to freedom of movement. And remember, down at Dover, we are still not fully implementing the full checks we are doing on cargo. So there is a whole thing that is still yet to come into play. And will this get kicked down the can again? It's highly likely, very highly likely, because even Jacob Rees-Mogg said, well, I'm not going to impose these checks yet, even though, again, this is a guy who's advocating for Brexit, because, well, if I do, it might cause a lot of chaos, which you're like, hold on a second, Jacob. You wanted these checks. Why are you not implementing them? Oh, well, they might cause a lot of chaos. So it comes as the Confederation of Passenger Transport, or the CPT, called for crisis talks with Rishi Sunak's government. The Kent Port and Ferry companies tried to resolve this mess once and for all. The coach operator body claimed that their vehicles had been treated unfairly after thousands of passengers were stalled in lengthy queues for up to 24 hours of the weekend. The queues of travellers heading to Europe for Easter had cleared by Monday morning. But there are fears that the congestion could return during other periods due to the French border officials having to carry out extra checks following Brexit. The CPT claimed that coaches were held back behind cars and HGVs, meaning that some of their passengers were delayed for up to 24 hours, and the travel body said that it fears the situation will only get worse when the start of the summer holiday period arrives. What we were saying at the beginning. So the CPT chief, the chief executive, Graham Wilder, said this: the procedures to enter the EU should not have a negative impact on people who don't want to fly or drive by car to continental Europe. They still have to show their passport. Like, what do you mean procedures don't have to apply? We are calling on the government and the Port of Dover Ferry and the ferry companies to get around the table with the coach sector to try and resolve this mess once and for all. Senior Tory MP Tim Loughton has claimed that the lack of staff at the French border controls is to blame for delays at Dover, not Brexit. He's saying it's a very fashionable thing to blame everything on Brexit, he told the Radio Times. This is every time this has happened, every single time this has happened, and they were doing this last year as well. Oh, it's the French not staffing their border controls. Well, remember what the French said last time? No, we had fully extra staff. Not only were they fully staffed, but then when we saw this extra stuff, we brought in more people. So the French were basically doing their jobs and are doing their jobs of what we have told them to do by treating us like a third country, which is what we warned about constantly. So Mr. Loughton is the former chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee and said that the lack of French border staff is causing the problems because there were not sufficient border force people there from the French of equivalent to try and check those passports. No, I guarantee you, someone will have asked the French and seen that no, these things were full. There was enough. What caused here was you just had such a large backup of people that it takes time. Remember, every single person on that coach has to get up, line up, queue, check the passports, do the stuff, and then get back on the coach. That takes time. And if you imagine all these coaches coming for the Easter break, that's a big problem. That's a big pileup. That is why this mess has been created. So Keir Starmer said that Brexit had an impact on these cross-channel journeys after a weekend disruption at the port of Dover, urging Sunak to get a grip. The Labour leader told LBC, of course Brexit has had an impact. There are more checks to be done. That doesn't mean that I'm advocating for a reversal of Brexit. I'm not. I have always said that there is now a case, that there is no case for not going back in. Well, again, we can disagree with that. I disagree with that. I understand why he's doing that. I've said before why. But again, even when Starmer becomes, Prime Minister, I fully expect, to be going, hey, look, Starmer should probably look at rejoining the EU, even after we're doing these sort of closer alignment checks, which again would only lead us back into joining it. And the idea that there is no case is ridiculous, because there was literally a case from day one. And we are seeing that case being played out and proven for a fact time after time after time again. So he can't ignore it forever. Like I say, the polls, the case for rejoining, the fact that I've said, we need to organize certainly a big pro-European movement in Labour. Just look at Labour for PR movement. Why could we not replicate that? But for single market membership or even sort of rejoining the EU, that is entirely doable. Julia Lobu said, the chief executive of the Travel Partnership, the UK's largest network for independent travel agents, has described the situation at Dover as distressing, adding, it's clear that the Brexit impact has not been adequately planned for. What a surprise. Doug Bannister, the Port's chief executive, said that it is absolutely true that queues at the port, first seen last summer, are a consequence of the UK's exit from the EU. Eurostar also revealed earlier this year that it is now forced to leave hundreds of thousands of seats empty on trains to and from London St Pancras to avoid long queues at stations. The cross-channel operator said that this is largely due in a reduction in the number of border officials, but has also blamed it on the stamping of UK passport post-Brexit. Again, something that we have to do. We can't get out of it. So, when asked about the possibility of further disruption ahead, Mr. Sunak's spokesperson said this: we are working with the Kent Resilience Forum, who are responding for plans for operations decisions and to try and cope with the potential for disruptions of high volumes of traffic. We're working with port authorities, operators in French, and the French government to try and keep any potential for a minimum to a minimum. So this ultimately is not going to go away. As we said before, this is not a one-off. This is permanent travel chaos. This ain't going away. And one of the things we sort of really get lucky about is that while that is sort of the main and the sort of the busiest sort of hub, especially to Europe, You haven't seen this really sort of not happen too much in other ports, like Hull. Hull is a massive sort of exporter over to sort of the Netherlands. You've got Newcastle as well. Their port pretty much predominantly sends stuff to Europe as well. Now, you haven't seen that, or at least this kind of disruption, because they're not focused on passenger numbers as they are more about cargo. And as I've said, I think once we start to actually see those full checks implemented on cargo, this is where we'll start to see big disruption at places like Hull and Newcastle and other ports around the country, and even worse at Dover. So it's just a matter of time before I think you get to see even more chaos. But this is just a thing now. This is just a thing. And sooner or later, people will start to realize, well, actually, it wasn't like this before Brexit. Actually, when we were in the EU, it was far, far better. Because I'll tell you now, I was in a queue not too long ago, and I was going to Monaco to get into France. I was very eagerly listening to sort of some conversations going on around me from the rest of my UK passengers. They were very, very interesting, to say the least. This is why I think, at the end of the day, as we join the single market customs union, very, very achievable. Very, very achievable. And I think this is where sort of the campaign has to sort of look at and go to. So, as always, like I say, we'll see, and we'll see what happens. But as always, until then, thank you very much for watching. And of course, thank you to all the people for watching, and again, helping support the channel. Again, links down below. And as always, guys, thank you for watching, and we'll see you all next time.